Sarah Mitchell quietly excels at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, training relentlessly in her grandfather's dojo every morning before dawn. The shy 15-year-old is preparing for the International Youth Combat Championship, where she'll face opponents from around the world. By the end of this story, you'll discover how a girl who barely speaks above a whisper in class becomes the talk of her entire school, and why her greatest strength isn't found in her martial arts skills at all. The sun hasn't risen over Seattle's rain-slicked streets when Sarah Mitchell slips through the back door of Highland Martial Arts Academy. The old building, with its worn wooden floors and faded photos of champions on the walls, has been her sanctuary since she was 6 years old. In the dim light of early morning, Sarah moves across the training mats with a grace that contradicts her awkward demeanor at school. The familiar scent of leather equipment and pine cleaner fills her lungs, a smell that always reminds her of safety. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Her grandfather, Master James Mitchell, watches from the corner as she performs her morning routine. While other teenagers are still asleep, Sarah practices takedowns and submissions with an intensity that would surprise her classmates, if they ever saw this side of her. But at Westbrook High, she's just the quiet girl who sits in the back of the class, head down, trying to avoid attention. The same girl who hasn't raised her hand to answer a question in 2 years, even though she maintains straight A's in every subject. "Your armbar technique is getting sloppy," Master Mitchell calls out, his voice stern but warm. "Remember, precision before power." Sarah nods, adjusting her grip on the training dummy. Her long, dark hair is pulled back in a tight braid, revealing a determined expression that only appears in the dojo. Sweat drips down her face as she repeats the movement again and again, each time with increasing precision. Master Mitchell approaches, his weathered hands adjusting her position slightly. Despite his 70 years, he moves with the fluidity of someone half his age. "Your mother had the same perfectionist streak," he says quietly. Sarah tenses at the mention of her mom, but continues her drills. The morning light slowly fills the room, casting long shadows across the wall of achievements. Dozens of medals and trophies, many bearing the Mitchell name. The morning session ends as the city begins to wake. Sarah quickly changes out of her GI, carefully folding it into her gym bag. She catches a glimpse of her competition medals hidden at the bottom. 5 gold, 3 silver. None of her classmates know about them. She prefers it that way. Each medal tells a story of triumph, but also reminds her of why she keeps this part of her life secret. In the changing room mirror, Sarah practices what her therapist calls her school face, neutral expression, slightly hunched shoulders, eyes down. The perfect invisibility costume. She spent 2 years perfecting this look ever since the incident at her old school. The memory makes her stomach clench, but she pushes it away, focusing instead on her grandfather's voice from the main room as he prepares for his first class of the day. At Westbrook High, the hallways are already buzzing with activity when Sarah arrives. She weaves through the crowd like she's navigating an obstacle course, keeping her eyes fixed on the floor. The technique usually works until she rounds the corner and collides with Madison Carter's designer handbag. "Watch it, freak," Madison sneers, flanked by her usual group of followers. The self-proclaimed queen of Westbrook High towers over Sarah in her expensive heels. Her perfectly manicured hands grip her bag like it's been contaminated. God, do you ever actually look where you're going? Or is your head permanently stuck in loser mode? Sarah mumbles an apology and tries to step around them, but Madison's boyfriend, Jake Turner, captain of the wrestling team, blocks her path. At 6 feet tall, he uses his size to intimidate, something that would almost be funny if Sarah didn't have to maintain her cover. "Hey Mitchell, I heard you dropped out of PE again yesterday. What's wrong? Too scared to change in front of other people? Got something to hide?" The truth is, Sarah does have something to hide. The bruises from training would raise too many questions. Questions lead to attention, and attention is exactly what she spent years avoiding. Not since the incident at her old school, when everything changed, when she learned that sometimes fighting back makes things worse, not better. In class, Sarah sits next to her only friend, Lily Chen, a bright-eyed girl who transferred from Hong Kong last year. Unlike Sarah, Lily isn't afraid to speak her mind. "You should stand up to them," she whispers as Madison makes another snide comment from across the room. "My uncle always says that bullies are just cowards in expensive clothes." Lily doesn't know about Sarah's past, but she's never pushed for explanations about why her friend is so withdrawn. Sarah manages a small smile, but shakes her head. Standing up to them would mean standing out, and standing out leads to people asking questions about her past, about why she suddenly transferred schools 2 years ago, about the reasons she flinches when someone raises their voice, about the nightmares that still wake her up sometimes. Some secrets are better kept hidden. The day drags on until lunch period, when Sarah's carefully constructed routine falls apart. She's eating alone. Lily has a student council meeting, when Jake and his wrestling teammates surround her table. The cafeteria noise dims as other students turn to watch, sensing entertainment. "Time for a little science experiment," Jake announces with a smirk. "We're trying to figure out if silent losers float or sink." Before Sarah can react, one of Jake's friends accidentally spills his water bottle all over her books. The cafeteria erupts in laughter as Sarah frantically tries to save her homework. Her hands shake as she picks up the soaked papers, memories of past humiliations flooding back. She can feel her carefully maintained control slipping, the muscle memory from years of training screaming at her to react, to defend, to fight back. That evening, in the safety of the dojo, Sarah throws herself into training with renewed intensity. Her grandfather notices the dark mood, but knows better than to pry. Instead, he adjusts her stance, corrects her technique, and quietly reminds her of the tournament coming up in 3 months, the International Youth Combat Championship, the biggest competition of her life, and one that could change everything. "Remember," he says as they finish for the day, "true strength isn't about winning fights. It's about knowing when to fight at all." Sarah nods, but her mind is already drifting to tomorrow's school day, and the familiar knot of anxiety tightens in her stomach. Her GI is soaked with sweat, her muscles ache, but the physical pain is easier to handle than the emotional weight she carries. What she doesn't know is that tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow, everything will change. The next morning arrives with an unusual tension in the air. Sarah's regular training session is interrupted when her grandfather receives an urgent phone call. As she executes a perfect sweep on the training dummy, she can't help but overhear fragments of his conversation. Something about the International Youth Combat Championship being moved up by 2 months. Her stomach drops. She's not ready. The competition was supposed to be her chance to finally show her true self, but now... "Sarah," Master Mitchell calls out, his expression serious. "We need to talk." He explains the situation. The championship venue had double booked, forcing a schedule change. Instead of 3 months to prepare, she now has just 4 weeks. "You can withdraw if you're not ready," he offers, but they both know she won't. Mitchells don't quit. At school, Sarah's mind is too preoccupied with the tournament news to maintain her usual invisible routine. She bumps into not 1 but 3 people before reaching her locker. The third collision is with Derek Chen, Lily's older brother and captain of the school's mixed martial arts club. Unlike his sister, Derek has always been intimidating, with his intense gaze and championship medals displayed proudly in the school's trophy case. "You okay?" he asks, steadying her with surprisingly gentle hands. Before Sarah can respond, Madison's voice cuts through the hallway like a knife. "Oh my God, look who's finally noticed boys exist." Madison's laugh echoes off the lockers. "Better be careful, Derek. The freak might start stalking you next." Her followers giggle on cue, but Derek doesn't move, his eyes fixed on Sarah with an odd expression. "You know," he says quietly, "we're always looking for new members in the MMA club." Sarah practically runs away, leaving him mid-sentence. The last thing she needs is to be anywhere near a martial arts club at school. Her careful separation of her 2 worlds depends on it. In chemistry class, Sarah's hands shake as she tries to measure solutions. The tournament's new date means she'll miss 3 weeks of school to travel and compete, 3 weeks of unexplained absence, 3 weeks of questions she can't answer. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Lily notices her distress and tries to help, but accidentally knocks over a beaker in the process. The resulting chaos draws unwanted attention from everyone, including Jake. Typical Mitchell, he sneers. Can't even handle basic lab work without freaking out. The teacher calls for order, but the damage is done. Sarah can feel her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. During lunch, things get worse. Madison and her crew have apparently decided that Sarah's interaction with Derek makes her a worthy target for elevated torment. They follow her to her usual quiet corner of the cafeteria, phones out, recording her every move. "We're documenting the mating habits of the North American loser," Madison narrates, her voice dripping with fake documentary-style concern. Notice how it tries to make itself invisible yet fails spectacularly. The phones follow Sarah as she tries to escape, but she's surrounded. Something in Sarah snaps. Not outwardly, she's too well trained for that. But inside, a decision crystallizes. She stands up, her movements suddenly fluid, controlled. For a fraction of a second, her school face slips, and Madison takes an involuntary step back, though she couldn't explain why. "What's wrong, Madison?" Sarah's voice is quiet but clear, the first time many of her classmates have heard her actually speak. Afraid of someone who doesn't fight back? The words carry a weight Sarah didn't intend, and Madison's eyes narrow at the challenge in them. "You know what? I'm done with this little charity project," Madison declares. "Jake, show the freak what happens when she forgets her place." Jake steps forward, cracking his knuckles theatrically. Sarah's muscle memory screams at her to move into a defensive stance, but she forces herself to remain still, reminding herself why she can't reveal her skills. Not after last time. Not after what happened at her old school. But Jake doesn't get the chance to do anything. Derek appears seemingly out of nowhere, stepping between them. "Back off, Jake," he says quietly, "unless you want Coach Wilson to hear about you threatening girls in the cafeteria." Jake hesitates. Derek's influence as team captain of a successful sports club carries weight. Finally, he backs down, pulling Madison away with him. "This isn't over, Mitchell," Madison calls over her shoulder. "Not even close." That evening, Sarah arrives at the dojo early, her emotions in turmoil. She works the heavy bag with unusual aggression, each strike precise but fueled by the day's frustrations. Her grandfather watches silently before finally speaking. "Something happened at school." It's not a question. Sarah continues punching, not trusting herself to speak. "You know," he continues, "your mother faced similar challenges when she competed. People didn't understand her dedication, her power. They feared what they didn't understand." Sarah freezes mid-strike. Her grandfather rarely mentions her mother, and never in connection to martial arts. Before she can respond, the dojo's door chimes. Sarah turns, expecting to see the first evening students arriving. Instead, she sees Derek Chen standing in the doorway, wearing a familiar black belt. And suddenly, Sarah realizes that keeping her two worlds separate might no longer be an option. Part 3. Worlds collide. Time seems to freeze as Sarah stares at Derek standing in the dojo entrance. His presence here, in her sanctuary, feels like an invasion of privacy. Master Mitchell, however, greets Derek warmly. "Ah, young Chen, I was wondering when you'd finally visit. Your uncle speaks highly of your dedication." Sarah's mind races. Derek trains under Master Wong, her grandfather's old friend and rival. How had she never made this connection? Then again, she'd spent 2 years carefully avoiding anything related to martial arts at school, including the MMA club's achievements. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Derek says, his eyes moving between Sarah and the heavy bag she'd been punishing moments ago. The perfect imprints of her strikes are still visible on the leather. I wanted to see if the rumors were true." "Rumors?" Sarah's voice comes out sharper than intended. "That Master Mitchell's star student trained here." Derek steps onto the mat, bowing respectfully. "I've seen your competition videos, Sarah. The ones from 2 years ago before you disappeared from the circuit. You were incredible." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Those videos, the last tournament, the reason she transferred schools. Her grandfather must sense her distress because he steps forward, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Perhaps it's time, little crane," he says softly, using her childhood nickname. "You can't keep hiding forever." But Sarah remembers all too well why she started hiding in the first place. The incident at Riverside Prep had taught her that lesson brutally. She'd been younger then, proud of her achievements, open about her training, until the day a group of senior girls decided the Karate Kid needed to be taught humility. They'd cornered her after school expecting an easy target. Instead, muscle memory and years of training kicked in. When it was over, 3 girls had minor injuries, and Sarah had a reputation as a violent thug. It didn't matter that she'd only defended herself, didn't matter that they'd attacked first. The girls' parents had threatened lawsuits, the school had talked about liability issues, and Sarah had learned that sometimes winning a fight means losing everything else. "I can't," she whispers, but Derek is already moving to the center of the mat. "Spar with me," he says. It's not a challenge or a threat. His tone is almost pleading. "Please, just once. I need to know if I'm good enough." Sarah looks to her grandfather, who nods encouragingly. "Sometimes," he says, "the right opponent can help us face our fears." Reluctantly, Sarah steps onto the mat. They bow to each other, and immediately she can tell that Derek is even better than his reputation suggests. His stance is perfect, his movement efficient. For the first few exchanges, they test each other with basic techniques, neither revealing their true skill level. Then Derek launches a complex combination of strikes, and Sarah's body responds automatically. She weaves through his attacks like water, redirecting his energy, turning defense into offense. For a moment, she forgets about school, about Madison, about everything except the pure joy of matching skills with a worthy opponent. The sparring session ends in a draw, both of them breathing hard but smiling. "That was amazing," Derek says, genuine admiration in his voice. "Why would you hide this? You could be teaching half the MMA club." Before Sarah can respond, a slow clapping sound echoes through the dojo. They turn to see Lily standing in the doorway, her phone in hand. "I knew it," she exclaims. "I knew there was more to you than you showed at school." Sarah's blood runs cold. Did you record that?" "Just the last minute," Lily says excitedly. "Sarah, you're incredible. Everyone needs to see—" "No!" Sarah's shout startles everyone. "Delete it, please. You don't understand what happened last time, what they did." "What who did?" Derek asks quietly. Sarah sinks onto a nearby bench, the weight of her memories becoming too heavy to bear. Her grandfather sits beside her, his presence comforting and solid. "Tell them," he encourages. "They're your friends. They deserve to know." So Sarah tells them everything. About Riverside Prep, about the girls who attacked her, about defending herself and being labeled dangerous, about her mother's death shortly after, how the stress of the lawsuits and school transfers had led to the car accident that took her away forever, about choosing invisibility as armor, hiding her skills to protect herself from ever being in that position again. When she finishes, there's a long silence. Finally, Lily steps forward and deletes the video without hesitation. "I'm sorry," she says. "I didn't know." "No one knows," Sarah replies. "And it needs to stay that way, especially now with the championship so close." Derek exchanges a look with her grandfather that Sarah can't quite interpret. "What if," he says slowly, "there was a way to change things? Not hiding, but not revealing everything either. A middle ground." "There is no middle ground," Sarah starts to say, but her grandfather interrupts. "Actually," he says, "there might be. But first, Sarah, you need to understand something about your mother, about why she really started competing, and about why what happened at Riverside Prep wasn't your fault." Sarah looks up, suddenly alert. In all these years, her grandfather has never spoken about this. As he begins to tell the story, none of them notice Madison's younger sister slipping away from the dojo's window, clutching her phone with trembling hands. Master Mitchell moves to the wall of the dojo, where dozens of framed photographs hang in neat rows. He stops at one that Sarah has passed 1,000 times. A young woman in competition gear, holding a trophy almost as tall as she is. Your mother, Catherine, was more than just a competitor, he begins. She was a pioneer. Sarah approaches the photo, studying her mother's familiar face. The image was taken 15 years ago, but Sarah had never really looked at the details before. The determined set of her mother's jaw, the confident stance, the way other competitors in the background seemed to be keeping their distance. Back then, women weren't taken seriously in competitive jiu-jitsu, Master Mitchell continues. Your mother changed that, but not without a price. He touches the frame gently. The same thing that happened to you at Riverside Prep. It happened to her, too, multiple times. Men who couldn't handle losing to a woman, competitors who tried to intimidate her off the mat. Derek and Lily listen intently as Master Mitchell reveals how Catherine Mitchell became the first woman to win the National Open Division Championship, competing against men and women alike. But it wasn't just about winning, he says. She started a program teaching self-defense to women who'd been victims of violence. She believed that martial arts wasn't about fighting. It was about finding your inner strength. Then why didn't you tell me this before? Sarah's voice cracks with emotion. Why let me think I had to hide who I am? Because you needed to find your own path, her grandfather replies. Just like your mother did. And maybe now with the championship coming up, it's time to honor her legacy. Before Sarah can respond, her phone buzzes with an incoming text, then another, and another. Her heart stops as she opens the first message. It's a video clip of her sparring with Derek, shot through the dojo window. The caption reads, Freak Mitchell's secret exposed. Madison's sister, Derek realizes aloud. She must have followed me here. Sarah's hands shake as more messages pour in. The video is spreading through the school's social circles like wildfire. Within minutes, her carefully constructed anonymity has completely unraveled. This changes everything, she whispers, but her grandfather shakes his head. This changes nothing, he corrects her. You are still who you are. The only difference is now others can see it too. Lily, who has been quiet for a while, suddenly perks up. Wait a minute, this could actually work in our favor. Everyone turns to look at her. Think about it. The video doesn't show you attacking anyone. It shows you training, practicing a legitimate sport with the captain of the school's MMA club. It's kind of amazing, actually. Lily's right, Derek adds. Half the comments are already asking if you're going to join the MMA club. People are impressed, Sarah, not scared. But Sarah's mind is racing ahead to tomorrow, to facing Madison and Jake, to walking through those school halls with everyone knowing her secret. I can't, she starts to say, but her grandfather interrupts by bringing out a small wooden box she's never seen before. Your mother wanted you to have this when you were ready, he says, opening the box to reveal a well-worn black belt. It was her first competition belt. And now, he holds it out to her. Now it's time. Sarah takes the belt with trembling hands. It's heavy with history, with her mother's legacy, with all the challenges she faced and overcame. As she runs her fingers over the embroidered name, something shifts inside her. The championship, she says suddenly. It's being held at Riverside Prep, isn't it? That's why it was moved up. They're hosting it this year. Her grandfather nods. Life has a way of bringing us full circle. The question is, are you ready to face it? Sarah looks at the belt in her hands, then at the photo of her mother. She thinks about all the time she's hidden her true self, all the energy spent trying to be invisible. Finally, she turns to Derek and Lily. I need your help, she says. Both of you. If I'm going to do this, really do this, I can't do it alone. Whatever you need, Lily responds immediately. The MMA club has your back, Derek adds. All of us. As they begin to plan, Sarah's phone continues to buzz with notifications. But now, instead of fear, she feels something else. Determination. Tomorrow, she'll walk into school wearing her mother's belt under her clothes. Not to show off, but to remind herself of who she is and where she comes from. What Sarah doesn't know is that across town, Madison and Jake are also making plans, and they're determined to prove that some secrets should stay buried, no matter what it takes. The next morning feels different. Sarah's regular dawn training session has an edge to it, each movement sharper, more focused. Her mother's black belt, now tied firmly around her waist, seems to radiate strength into her very core. Master Mitchell watches her with knowing eyes as she completes her routine with unprecedented precision. "Your mother wore that belt the day she faced her biggest challenge," he says, adjusting Sarah's stance slightly. "The National Championships, 2008. 3 matches with a sprained ankle. She could have withdrawn, played it safe." He pauses, making sure Sarah is listening. "Instead, she showed the world what a Mitchell is made of." Sarah nods, understanding the message. As she changes for school, she carefully folds the belt and places it in her bag. Not hiding it, but not flaunting it either. Just keeping it close, like a secret source of strength. The moment she steps onto the school grounds, she knows everything has changed. The usual morning chatter dies down as heads turn in her direction. She catches fragments of whispered conversations. "Did you see the video?" "Trains with Derek Chen. Some kind of martial arts champion." Lily appears at her side, walking with her like a bodyguard. "The video has over 2,000 views," she reports. "And get this, the MMA club's social media is blowing up. People are actually asking when they can see you compete." Before Sarah can respond, Madison steps into their path, flanked by her usual group. But something's different. Her followers seem uncertain, keeping slightly more distance than usual. Only Jake, standing at Madison's shoulder, maintains his aggressive stance. Well, Madison sneers, but there's a slight tremor in her voice. "If it isn't Bruce Lee's little sister? Come to karate chop your way through school?" Sarah feels the old urge to shrink away, to make herself invisible. But her mother's belt presses against her back through her bag, and instead, she straightens up to her full height. "It's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, actually," she says clearly. "And I don't use it to hurt people. Never have." "Oh, really?" Jake steps forward, his wrestling team's swagger in full effect. "What about those girls at your old school, the ones you put in the hospital?" Sarah's blood runs cold. How did they know about that? Then she spots Madison's sister hovering at the edge of the crowd, phone still in hand. Of course, they'd done their research after seeing the video. "That's not what happened," Lily starts to say, but Sarah touches her arm, silencing her. The gathered students lean in, hungry for drama. "You're right, Jake. There was an incident at my old school." Sarah's voice carries across the suddenly silent hallway. 3 seniors cornered me behind the gym. They wanted to teach the karate kid a lesson." She meets Jake's eyes steadily. "Would you like to know what really happened?" Before Jake can respond, Derek pushes through the crowd. He's wearing his MMA club jacket, and behind him are several other team members. They take up positions near Sarah, not threatening, but present. "The truth," Derek announces, "is that Sarah was cleared of all charges. The security cameras caught everything. 3 attackers, 1 defender. Maybe Jake can explain the difference since he's so interested in martial arts history." Jake flushes red, but Madison isn't done. "Please," she scoffs. "You're all acting like she's some kind of hero. She's just a violent freak who's been lying to everyone for years. Want to prove it?" The words leave Sarah's mouth before she can stop them. The crowd goes silent again. The MMA club is hosting a charity exhibition match next week. Open sparring, controlled environment, referees present. "You seem to have a lot of opinions about martial arts, Madison. Why don't you back them up?" Madison pales slightly. I don't..." She accepts, Jake interrupts. Madison whirls to stare at him, but he's already continuing. "But not her. Mister, I'll represent her in the match." "Jake, no," Madison hisses, but he ignores her. "Unless you're scared," he taunts Sarah. "I am the wrestling team captain after all. And I outweigh you by what, 50 pounds?" Sarah should feel intimidated. Instead, she feels strangely calm. Official rules? Proper safety equipment? Full referee supervision? Whatever you want, Jake smirks. When I win, you leave the school. For good this time. And when I win, Sarah counters, you publicly apologize to everyone you've ever bullied, with video evidence. The bell rings, breaking the tension. As the crowd disperses, Sarah feels a rush of adrenaline. What did she just agree to? But then she sees Derek grinning at her, Lily bouncing with excitement, and other students looking at her with something new in their eyes, respect. Later in the girls' bathroom, Madison corners her alone. But instead of threats, she says something unexpected. You have no idea what you've done. Jake, he's not going to fight fair. He can't lose, his whole future depends on it. Before Sarah can ask what she means, Madison hurries out, leaving Sarah with a sinking feeling that there's more to this challenge than she realized. Much more. After school, Sarah stays late to watch the wrestling team practice, studying Jake's movements from the gymnasium bleachers. Derek sits beside her, providing quiet commentary on Jake's technique. His right side is weaker, he notes, and he relies too much on brute strength. But Sarah notices something else, the way Coach Wilson keeps singling Jake out, the intense pressure in their interactions. When Jake loses a practice match, the coach's reaction seems disproportionately harsh. That's the third time this week, Turner, he shouts. You want that scholarship to slip away? Because that's exactly what's going to happen. Sarah turns to Derek. Scholarship? Full ride to state, Derek explains quietly. But only if he maintains his winning record. Jake's family, they're not like Madison's. He can't afford college without it. The revelation hits Sarah hard. Suddenly, Madison's warning makes more sense. This isn't just about a school rivalry or wounded pride. It's about Jake's entire future. The weight of what she's agreed to feels heavier than before. After practice, Sarah heads to the dojo, her mind churning with this new information. She's surprised to find Lily already there, deep in conversation with her grandfather. Sarah? Lily jumps up excitedly. I've been doing research. Did you know there's footage online of your mother's matches? Including the one where she… Not now, Lily, Sarah interrupts. But Master Mitchell raises his hand. Actually, this is perfect timing. Lily has discovered something interesting about your mother's championship match, the one against Michael Turner. Sarah freezes. Turner? As in ... Jake's father, Lily confirms. He was a champion wrestler too, until your mom beat him in an open division match. It was controversial because she was smaller, faster, and used his own strength against him. A new voice interrupts. They turn to see Madison standing in the dojo doorway, looking uncomfortable but determined. Jake's dad never got over that loss. It's why he pushes Jake so hard, why he's obsessed with proving that strength always wins. Sarah stares at her former tormentor. Why are you telling me this? Madison steps fully into the dojo, wringing her hands. Because Jake's not just fighting for a scholarship anymore. His dad, he's been training Jake secretly, pushing him way too hard. Last night, after the challenge was made, she pauses, fighting tears. He told Jake that if he loses to you, he'll pull him out of school and send him to military academy. Says he won't have another Turner humiliated by a Mitchell. The revelation lands like a physical blow. Sarah sinks onto a nearby bench, her mother's belt suddenly feeling impossibly heavy. This isn't about me at all, is it? It's about our parents. It's more than that, Madison continues, surprising everyone with her honesty. Jake's been different lately, aggressive, taking these pills his dad gave him. Something about increasing muscle mass quickly. He's not sleeping, barely eating. I'm scared he's going to hurt himself. Or ... She looks directly at Sarah. Or someone else. Master Mitchell steps forward, his expression grave. These pills, do you know what they are? Madison shakes her head. Jake won't tell me. But they're not from a regular doctor, and they're changing him. The Jake I know would never agree to fight a girl, especially not with his future on the line. But his dad has convinced him that this is his chance to restore the family honor or something ridiculous like that. Sarah thinks about Jake's increasingly erratic behavior, his desperate need to prove himself. She thinks about her own mother, who fought not for glory but for change, who used martial arts to build people up, not tear them down. The exhibition match, she says slowly. It's in 3 days. If Jake's taking something dangerous, competing could be really bad for his health. But if you back out, everyone will think you're scared, Lily points out, and Jake will still be under his dad's influence. Derek, who has been quietly observing, finally speaks. There might be another way. All eyes turn to him. The rules of the exhibition match require both participants to pass a medical screening, if Jake's taking performance enhancers. They'll show up in the test, Sarah finishes, but that would disqualify him. He'd lose the scholarship anyway. Not necessarily, Master Mitchell interjects. Sometimes the greatest victory comes from refusing to fight on someone else's terms. He looks meaningfully at the photo of Sarah's mother. Your mother understood that. The question is, what would help Jake more? Letting him fight and risk his health, or finding a way to free him from his father's obsession? Sarah looks at Madison, seeing genuine concern beneath her usually perfect facade. I need to know exactly what's in those pills, she says, and I need proof that his father is behind it. Can you help? Madison nods slowly. Jake keeps them in his gym bag, and I might have recorded some of his dad's training sessions. I thought I might need them someday if things got too bad. Then we have work to do, Sarah says, standing up. Because in 3 days, something's going to change. I'm just not sure yet if it'll be a fight or a rescue. The next morning arrives with a sense of urgency. Sarah, Derek, Lily, and Madison gather in the empty MMA club room before school, speaking in hushed tones despite being alone. Madison places Jake's gym bag on a table, borrowed without his knowledge while he was in the shower after his morning training session with his father. Are you sure about this? Sarah asks as Madison reaches for the bag's zipper. Once we look inside, there's no going back. Madison's hands tremble slightly, but her voice is firm. Jake was up at 4 a.m. again today, training with his dad. I heard him getting sick in the bathroom afterward. This has to stop. Inside the bag, beneath wrestling gear and protein bar wrappers, they find an unmarked bottle of pills. Derek examines them carefully, his expression darkening. These aren't legal supplements. The coating, the size, I've seen these before. A guy on my old competition team nearly died from something similar. Lily, who's been photographing everything with her phone, looks up from the screen. I've got clear shots of the pills, the bottle, and the bag showing it's Jake's, but we need proof his dad's involved. I have that too, Madison says quietly. She pulls out her phone and plays a video. The footage is shaky, shot through a partially open door, but the audio is clear. Jake's father's voice booms through the speaker. Take 2 before every training session. They're completely safe. I used them myself back in the day. This is your chance to prove you're not weak like I was, to show everyone what real strength looks like. Sarah feels sick listening to the manipulation in Mr. Turner's voice. The video continues, showing Jake looking uncertainly at the pills while his father towers over him. But Coach Wilson's drug testing, Jake begins, is scheduled for after the exhibition match. His father cuts him off. They'll be out of your system by then. This is about more than some school wrestling scholarship, son. This is about family honor, about proving that no Mitchell can beat a Turner in a fair fight. That's enough, Sarah says, and Madison stops the video. We have what we need. Question is, what do we do with it? Derek leans against a wall, thinking, if we take this to Coach Wilson now, Jake gets disqualified from wrestling completely. He loses everything. The scholarship, his future. But if we don't, Lily interjects, he could end up in the hospital, or worse. Sarah picks up her mother's belt from where it sits, coiled on the table. There might be another way, she says slowly. But it's risky and everyone needs to play their part perfectly. Over the next hour, they develop their plan. Madison will return the gym bag before Jake notices it's missing. Lily will edit the video footage, making multiple copies for safety. Derek will speak with the exhibition match's medical team about specific testing protocols. And Sarah? Sarah has the most dangerous role of all. Later that day, she deliberately crosses paths with Jake in the hallway. He's looking worse than ever. Dark circles under his eyes, hands shaking slightly. Despite Madison's warnings about his increased aggression, Sarah sees something else in his face. Fear. "Jake," she calls out, ignoring how he immediately tenses. "I need to show you something. About your father. And mine." "Stay away from me," he growls, but there's a tremor in his voice. "Did you know they competed against each other?" Sarah continues, pulling out her phone. "Not in the match everyone talks about, there was another one earlier. When they were friends?" This catches Jake off guard. "What are you talking about?" Sarah pulls up an old video her grandfather had archived. "Look," she says, holding out the phone. Jake hesitates, then takes it. The footage shows two young men, Jake's father and Sarah's, practicing together, laughing, helping each other up after takedowns. They move with the easy confidence of athletes in their prime, before ego and rivalry poisoned everything. "That's not possible," Jake whispers. "My dad said..." "They trained together for years," Sarah tells him. "Before the competitions, before the pressure, before..." She pauses, choosing her words carefully. "Before people started taking shortcuts." Jake's hand moves unconsciously to his gym bag, where the bottle of pills sits like a ticking time bomb. "You don't know anything about it," he says, but his voice lacks conviction. "Maybe not," Sarah concedes. "But I know what it's like to have everyone expecting you to be something you're not, to feel like you have to prove yourself even if it kills you." She turns to leave, then stops. "The exhibition match doesn't have to happen, Jake. There are better ways to restore honor than destroying yourself." As she walks away, she can feel Jake's eyes on her back. Phase 1 of their plan is complete, planting the seed of doubt. Now they just have to hope it grows before the match in 2 days. But what Sarah doesn't know is that Jake's father has been watching their interaction from around the corner, and he's already making plans of his own to ensure his son doesn't show any weakness, plans that will put everyone in danger. The next morning, everything goes wrong. Sarah arrives at school to find Madison waiting by her locker, face pale with panic. "Jake's gone," she says without preamble. "His dad pulled him out of school yesterday afternoon, said they're doing intensive training until the match." Sarah's stomach drops. "What kind of intensive training?" "I don't know. He won't answer my texts, but I drove by his house this morning and..." Madison swallows hard. "I could hear yelling from the garage. His dad was screaming about weakness and family pride. And Jake didn't sound good." Before they can discuss it further, Derek rushes up, his usual calm demeanor shattered. "We have a bigger problem. Someone broke into the MMA club room last night. The medical testing equipment for the exhibition match, it's all been tampered with." "Tampered how?" Sarah asks, already dreading the answer. "The calibration's off on everything. If we hadn't double-checked this morning, all the tests would have come back negative no matter what was in someone's system." Derek runs a hand through his hair in frustration. "This isn't just about a school match anymore. Mr. Turner's actively trying to hide what he's doing to his own son," Sarah thinks quickly. Their original plan relied on the medical screening catching the performance enhancers in Jake's system. Without that, "We need to tell Coach Wilson." "Already tried," Derek says. "He's not at school either. Apparently he's at some emergency meeting with the district athletic board. Won't be back until tomorrow, the day of the match." Lily joins them, clutching her laptop. "That's not all," she says grimly. "Remember that video of Jake's dad giving him the pills? It's gone. Someone hacked my cloud account overnight and deleted everything, even the backup copies." "Not everything," Madison interjects. She pulls out her phone with shaking hands. "I kept one copy, saved offline. But there's something else you need to see. A message Jake's dad sent me this morning." She shows them the text. "Stay out of family business, Madison. Your father's construction company relies heavily on my legal services. Would be a shame if that relationship had to end." "He's threatening your family?" Sarah asks incredulously. Madison nods miserably. "My dad's company is already struggling. If Mr. Turner pulls his firm's support, she doesn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone understands the implications. Sarah feels the walls closing in. Their carefully constructed plan is falling apart, and Jake is trapped with an increasingly desperate father. She reaches for her mother's belt, which she now carries everywhere, drawing strength from its familiar weight. "We need help," she says finally. "Adult help, someone who can't be threatened or manipulated." "The police," Lily suggests, but Derek shakes his head. Without proof of actual harm, they can't do anything. And Mr. Turner's a lawyer. He knows exactly how far he can push things legally. "Then we go to someone who operates outside the legal system," Sarah says, an idea forming. "Someone who understands honor and tradition. Someone both Jake's dad and my mom used to respect." The others look at her questioningly until understanding dawns on Madison's face. "Master Chen," she breathes. "Derek's uncle, the one who trained with both your mom and Jake's dad back in the day." "Exactly," Sarah confirms. "He's still one of the most respected figures in the martial arts community, if anyone can get through to Mr. Turner... But before they can develop this new plan, Sarah's phone buzzes with a message. It's from an unknown number, but the content makes her blood run cold. Like father, like daughter. Your mom couldn't mind her own business either. Look where that got her. Attached is a photo. One Sarah has never seen before. It shows her mother's car, crumpled against a guardrail. The accident that took her life. The one that was ruled a tragic case of brake failure. "Sarah?" Lily touches her arm, concerned by her sudden pallor. "What is it?" Sarah shows them the message. Derek immediately takes her phone, his face darkening. "This is witness tampering, threatening a minor. He's getting desperate." "No," Sarah says quietly, staring at the photo of her mother's car. "He's getting sloppy. He just gave us exactly what we needed, proof that he's willing to do anything to win, including... She can't finish the sentence, but she doesn't need to. The bell rings, but none of them move toward class. The exhibition match is tomorrow, but suddenly it feels like a smokescreen for something much darker. Sarah looks at her friends, at Madison's fear for Jake, at Lily's determination to uncover the truth, at Derek's protective anger. "New plan," she announces. "We're not waiting for tomorrow. We're getting Jake out of there today. Who's with me?" 4 hands rise without hesitation. The time for playing it safe is over. Now it's about saving someone's life. Maybe more than one. The plan comes together quickly. Derek calls his uncle Master Chen while driving them to the Turner house. The old master's response is immediate. "Keep them there." "I'm on my way." Sarah can hear the gravity in his voice even through the speakerphone. Madison guides them to Jake's house, a modest 2-story in a quiet neighborhood. The garage door is closed, but they can hear the rhythmic sound of someone hitting a heavy bag, punctuated by harsh verbal jabs from Mr. Turner's voice. "Harder! You think that Mitchell girl trains this soft? Your mother would be ashamed of you." Sarah's fists clench at the psychological manipulation, but it's Madison's reaction that surprises everyone. The usually composed girl storms toward the garage's side door. "Enough," she whispers fiercely. "I'm not watching him destroy Jake like this anymore." Before anyone can stop her, Madison punches in the garage key code. "Jake gave it to me months ago," and pushes the door open. The scene inside freezes them all in place. Jake is barely standing, drenched in sweat, his hands wrapped in bloodied tape as he weakly strikes the bag. His father looms over him, a bottle of pills in one hand and a phone in the other. On the phone's screen, Sarah recognizes the same photo of her mother's crashed car that was sent to her. "Madison?" Jake's voice cracks with confusion. Then he sees the others and something like hope flickers across his exhausted face. "Sarah!" Mr. Turner spins around, his expression contorting from surprise to rage. "What is this? Get out of my house before I—" "Before you what?" Sarah steps forward, phone raised. "Before you threaten more families? Before you tamper with more evidence? Or before you explain what really happened to my mother's brakes?" The accusation hangs in the air like smoke. Mr. Turner's face goes through a rapid series of emotions before settling into a cold smile. Careful, little girl. Accusations like that could be considered defamation, and unlike your mother, I understand how to use the law to my advantage. The law? A new voice enters the conversation as Master Chen appears in the doorway, his presence filling the space with quiet authority. Is that what you call forcing performance-enhancing drugs on your own son, Michael? Mr. Turner's composure cracks slightly at the sight of his old mentor. Master Chen, this is a private family matter. Nothing about this is private anymore, Derek interrupts, holding up his phone. He's been recording since they entered. Not the drugs, not the threats, and definitely not what you did 2 years ago. Jake sways on his feet, looking between his father and his friends. Dad? What are they talking about? What did you do? Mr. Turner's face reddens. Don't listen to them, son. They're trying to weaken you, just like my mom. Sarah's voice cuts through his defense. The same mom who tried to report suspicious betting patterns in the tournament circuit? Who was going to expose how certain competitors were being drugged? She turns to Jake. Your dad didn't just lose to my mom in competition. She was about to reveal everything he'd been doing behind the scenes. Until ... Until her brakes mysteriously failed, Master Chen finishes, his eyes fixed on his former student. I kept quiet then, Michael, out of respect for our history. But watching you destroy your own son the same way? He shakes his head. No more. Mr. Turner's control finally snaps. He lunges forward, not toward Sarah or Master Chen, but toward Jake. We're leaving now. This ends tomorrow in the ring where it should. But Jake, for the first time, stands his ground. No. The single word seems to cost him tremendous effort. I saw what was in those pills. Looked them up last night. They're killing me, Dad, just like... He turns to Sarah. Just like your lies killed her. The admission hits Mr. Turner like a physical blow. He staggers back, the bottle of pills falling from his hand. Madison darts forward, snatching them up as evidence. It's over, Master Chen says quietly. The police are already on their way, as is the athletic board investigator. Sarah steps toward Jake, who looks ready to collapse. You don't have to be part of his revenge anymore, she says softly. You never did. The sound of approaching sirens fills the air. Mr. Turner makes one last desperate move toward the garage's main door, but Derek and Master Chen smoothly block his path. The older man's shoulders slump in defeat just as red and blue lights begin flashing through the windows. Jake finally lets his legs give out, and Madison rushes to catch him. Sarah watches as her former tormentor cradles her former enemy, tears streaming down both their faces. The sound of car doors slamming outside barely registers as she processes everything that's happened. Your mother would be proud, Master Chen tells her quietly. Not because of any victory, but because you fought for what was right. Sarah touches her mother's belt, now understanding its true weight. It was never about winning matches. It was about standing up for others, even when they couldn't stand up for themselves. As the police enter the garage, Sarah realizes that tomorrow's exhibition match won't be happening after all. But somehow, she's won something far more important than any competition could offer. The next few days pass in a blur of police statements and media attention. The story breaks across local news. Former martial arts champion's death linked to tournament scandal. Sarah's mother's case is reopened, and Mr. Turner faces multiple charges, from drug distribution to criminal negligence to possible manslaughter. Jake spends 2 days in the hospital, detoxing from the dangerous cocktail of performance enhancers his father had been giving him. Madison barely leaves his side, while her own father, learning the full story, publicly announces his company's split from Turner Legal Services, regardless of the financial consequences. At school, everything has changed. The exhibition match is canceled, but Sarah finds herself the center of a different kind of attention. Students who once avoided her now stop to express their sympathy about her mother, their admiration for her standing up to Mr. Turner, their respect for her martial arts achievements. How do you handle it? She asks Derek during lunch. All the eyes on you, all the time. Derek, still wearing his MMA club captain's jacket, considers the question. You know what my uncle always says. True strength isn't in hiding who you are. It's in being who you are, especially when it's hard. Sarah touches her mother's belt, which she now wears openly over her school clothes, not as a symbol of fighting prowess, but as a reminder of what real strength looks like. Lily joins them, laptop in hand. "You guys need to see this," she says, pulling up a news website. They're doing a full investigation into the tournament circuit. Turns out Mr. Turner wasn't the only one involved in the performance-enhancing drug scandal. They're reviewing every major competition from the past 5 years. "That's not all," Madison adds, sliding into the seat next to them. She looks tired but determined. "Jake's been talking to the investigators. Apparently his dad kept records of everything. Every fighter he helped drug, every bet he placed, every match he influenced. He was obsessed with documenting his revenge against the system he blamed for his downfall." Sarah absorbs this information, thinking about all the young athletes like Jake who might have been pressured or manipulated. "What happens to the scholarship programs?" she asks, worried about the ripple effects of the scandal. "Coach Wilson's working on that," Derek replies. "He's reached out to the state athletic board. They're talking about implementing new testing protocols, but also about creating more support systems for athletes dealing with pressure from parents or coaches." Just then, Jake himself appears at their table. He looks different, thinner, but somehow lighter, as if a great weight has been lifted from his shoulders. The cafeteria goes quiet, watching this interaction with collective held breath. "Sarah," he says, his voice still rough from the hospital. "Can we talk? Privately?" They move to a quiet corner of the courtyard. Jake struggles to meet her eyes. "I've been trying to figure out how to say this," he begins. "Sorry doesn't even begin to cover it, not just for what I did, but for what my father—" He trails off, emotion choking his words. "It wasn't your fault," Sarah says firmly. "You were as much a victim as anyone." "Maybe," Jake acknowledges, "but I still had choices, and I made the wrong ones over and over." He takes a deep breath. "The investigators found something else in my dad's records. A letter your mom wrote to him, right before the accident. She tried to reach out to help him. Said she remembered who he used to be back when he trained with your grandfather, when he cared about honor and teaching rather than just winning." Sarah feels tears threatening but holds them back. "That sounds like her." "Yeah," Jake says softly. "Look, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but the doctors say I can't compete anymore. The drugs did some damage that's going to take time to heal. But I was thinking, maybe I could help Coach Wilson with that new support program, try to keep other kids from going through what I did." Sarah studies him, the genuine remorse in his face, the desire to make amends. She thinks about her mother, who always believed in second chances. "I think that's a good idea," she says finally. "And if you want, my grandfather's dojo runs some youth classes, teaching kids about real martial arts, about respect and discipline. They could probably use another assistant instructor once you're better." Jake's eyes widen in surprise, then fill with grateful tears. "I'd like that," he manages to say. As they walk back to their friends, Sarah notices how natural it feels now. Madison and Lily deep in conversation about the upcoming student council elections, Derek offering Jake advice about physical therapy exercises, herself no longer trying to hide or blend into the background. Her phone buzzes with a text from her grandfather. "Competition committee called. They want to rename the regional youth tournament in your mother's honor, a legacy of integrity and courage, just like her daughter." Sarah smiles, feeling for the first time that she's truly honoring her mother's memory, not by winning fights but by helping heal the wounds that create them in the first place. 3 weeks later, Sarah stands at the entrance of Riverside Prep, her old school, where everything first went wrong. The building looks smaller than she remembers, less intimidating. Today it's hosting the International Youth Combat Championship, now renamed the Catherine Mitchell Memorial Tournament. "Ready?" Derek asks, adjusting his referee uniform. After the scandal, the tournament committee had made sweeping changes, bringing in new officials and implementing stricter protocols. They'd specifically requested students from various dojos to help staff the event, promoting a new era of transparency. Sarah nods, touching her mother's belt for reassurance. She's not competing today. That was never the point. Instead, she's here as a student instructor, helping her grandfather run a special demonstration on ethical martial arts training. Madison and Jake are already inside, setting up the registration table. Jake's recovery is progressing well, and though he can't compete, he's thrown himself into his new role as a peer counselor for young athletes. The local sports commission even asked him to help develop their new anti-bullying program. "Sarah Mitchell?" a voice calls out. She turns to see a group of girls about her age approaching. With a jolt, she recognizes them. The same girls who'd cornered her 2 years ago, leading to her transfer. But their expressions now are different, uncertain, almost apologetic. "We saw the news," one of them says. "About what really happened. About your mom. We never knew." She pauses, struggling with the words. "What we did to you, we were stupid and cruel. We've been wanting to apologize, but never knew how to reach you." Sarah studies their faces, remembering the fear and anger of that day. But now, she feels something different. Understanding. "We were all younger then," she says finally. "Still learning who we wanted to be?" The girls look relieved, and one of them hesitantly asks about the demonstration class they'll be giving later. Soon they're deep in conversation about martial arts philosophy and the true meaning of strength. Sarah catches Lily filming the interaction on her phone, probably for the documentary she's making about the tournament's transformation. Inside the gym, the atmosphere is electric, but different from previous years. Master Chen stands with other senior instructors, discussing the new emphasis on technique and respect, rather than just victory. Young competitors warm up under careful supervision, with medical staff vigilantly watching for any signs of unsafe practices. Sarah spots her grandfather talking with someone unexpected, Jake's mother, who left years ago when Mr. Turner's obsession with winning began consuming their family. She'd reached out after the scandal broke, wanting to help her son heal. Now she's part of the parent advisory committee working to prevent similar situations. "It's strange," Madison says, joining Sarah as they watch Jake embrace his mother. "A few months ago, all any of us cared about was who was strongest, who was most popular, who could hurt who. Now look at us." Sarah understands what she means. The same space that once hosted bitter rivalries and dangerous competitions now feels like a community coming together. She watches as Derek helps a nervous young competitor with her stance, as Lily interviews former athletes about their experiences with pressure and recovery, as Jake shares his story with a group of parents. "Your mother would have loved this," her grandfather says, appearing beside her. "She always said that martial arts wasn't about fighting. It was about building bridges between people." As if to prove his point, Sarah notices one of her former bullies showing a younger student how to fall safely, while another helps Madison organize the scheduling boards. The barriers between schools, between former rivals, between past and present, all seem to be dissolving. The tournament director calls everyone together for the opening ceremony. Sarah takes her place beside her grandfather, ready to demonstrate the forms her mother once performed on this very mat. But first, she has a speech to give, one about honor, healing, and the true meaning of strength. Looking out at the gathered crowd, Sarah sees all the threads of her story coming together. Derek standing proud in his referee's uniform, Lily capturing everything on camera, Madison and Jake working side by side, her former bullies becoming allies, and her mother's legacy living on in ways she never expected. 2 years ago, I left this place thinking I had to hide who I was to be safe, she begins, her voice clear and strong. Today, I realize that true safety comes not from hiding our strength, but from using it to protect and support each other. The crowd listens intently as she continues, and Sarah feels the last weights of her past lifting away. She's no longer the girl who runs from conflict, nor is she the one who fights back blindly. She's become something else entirely, someone who helps others find their own kind of strength. As she finishes her speech and moves into the first demonstration form, Sarah catches a glimpse of her reflection in the gym's mirrors. For the first time, she really sees herself, not as her mother's daughter, not as a victim, not as a hidden champion, but as herself, someone who found her own way to honor the past while building a better future. The Catherine Mitchell Memorial Tournament proves to be unlike any martial arts event ever held at Riverside Prep. Instead of just matches, the day is filled with demonstrations, workshops, and honest discussions about the pressures young athletes face. Sarah's speech sets the tone, but it's the actions that follow that truly show how much has changed. During the lunch break, Sarah finds herself sitting with an unlikely group, her old bullies, her new friends, and several young competitors who've been hanging on her every word. They're discussing the morning's events when one of the youngest girls, barely 12, raises her hand hesitantly. "Is it true what they're saying?" she asks Sarah. "That you could have competed today but chose not to?" Sarah sets down her water bottle, considering how to answer. "Sometimes winning isn't about beating someone else," she says finally. "Sometimes it's about helping others win their own battles." Jake, who's been quiet most of the day, suddenly speaks up. "Like how you helped me win mine." His voice carries across the table, strong despite its softness. "Even when I was your enemy, you saw someone worth saving." The conversation turns to Jake's story, which he shares openly now, not with shame, but as a warning and a lesson. The younger athletes listen intently as he describes the pressure, the pills, the price of pursuing victory at any cost. Madison holds his hand as he speaks, her own journey from bully to advocate evident in how she supports him. After lunch, Sarah leads a special seminar with her grandfather. They demonstrate how martial arts can be both powerful and controlled, how true strength lies in knowing when not to use it. The gym is packed, with Derek and the other referees having to manage crowd control. "This is better than any competition," Lily comments, still filming everything. Her documentary has evolved from a simple tournament record into something more meaningful, a story about transformation and healing. The afternoon brings a surprise visitor, Coach Wilson, who arrives with news. The State Athletic Board has approved a new scholarship program, one based not just on competitive success, but on character and community service. Jake will be one of the first recipients, recognized for his courage in coming forward, and his work with younger athletes. "Your mother started something similar," Sarah's grandfather tells her, as they watch Jake receive the news, tears streaming down his face as his mother hugs him. "A program to help athletes who needed second chances. The board shut it down back then, said it wasn't competitive enough. And now it's back," Sarah observes, "stronger than ever." The day's events conclude with a special demonstration. Sarah, wearing her mother's belt, performs a complex series of forms alongside students from every participating dojo. The movements tell a story, not of combat, but of harmony, of balance, of strength used wisely. As she moves through the familiar patterns, Sarah catches glimpses of how far everyone has come. Madison, now helping younger girls build confidence through martial arts. Derek, becoming a leader who values growth over victory. Lily, using her skills to shed light on important issues. Jake, finding redemption through helping others. After the demonstration, Sarah's grandfather gathers everyone for a final announcement. The Catherine Mitchell Youth Development Program will be expanding, offering free classes to students who can't afford traditional training. Several dojos, including Master Chen's, have already signed up to participate. "But we need instructors," he says, looking meaningfully at Sarah. "People who understand that martial arts is about more than just fighting. People who can teach others to be strong without becoming hard, to be powerful without becoming cruel." Sarah feels the weight of every eye in the gym, but for the first time the attention doesn't make her want to hide. Instead, she steps forward, ready to accept the challenge. This, she realizes, is what her mother was working toward all along. Not just teaching martial arts, but teaching life. The day ends with an informal gathering in the school courtyard. Students from different dojos mingle freely, sharing techniques and stories. Former rivals help each other with difficult moves. Younger athletes seek advice from older ones, not about winning, but about staying true to themselves. Sarah watches it all from a quiet corner, her mother's belt still around her waist. Master Chen approaches, his wise eyes taking in the scene. "Your mother once told me, he says quietly, that her greatest hope was that the next generation would learn to use their strength to lift others up, not tear them down. Looking at all this, he gestures to the courtyard full of laughing, learning students. I'd say you've helped make that hope a reality. Sarah smiles, thinking of how far they've all come from those first tense days at Westbrook High. The shy girl who tried to be invisible has become someone who helps others be seen. The bully who terrorized her has become one of her strongest allies. The rival who tried to defeat her has become a partner in creating positive change. We all have power, she says, watching a group of younger students practicing together, helping rather than competing. The real strength is in choosing how to use it. 6 months after the Catherine Mitchell Memorial Tournament, Sarah stands in front of Westbrook High's packed auditorium. The premiere of Lily's documentary, Hidden Strength, has just finished, and the applause is deafening. On screen, the final images fade. Sarah teaching a class of young students, Jake mentoring troubled athletes, Madison organizing self-defense workshops for girls. As Sarah takes the microphone for the Q&A session, she can hardly believe how much has changed. The scared girl who once tried to disappear has become someone others look up to. But more importantly, she's become someone who helps others find their own strength. The biggest lesson, she tells the audience, wasn't about martial arts at all. It was about breaking the cycle of fear and violence, about standing up not just for yourself, but for others. In the front row, Jake sits with his mother, both of them looking healthier than ever. His father's trial is ongoing, but Jake's testimony has already helped uncover a deeper web of corruption in competitive sports. More importantly, his story has inspired other young athletes to come forward about the pressure they face. Madison, now student body president, has transformed the school's anti-bullying program into something revolutionary. It's not enough to just punish bullies, she explains during the Q&A. We have to understand why people hurt others and help them find better ways to deal with their own pain. The documentary has caught national attention, with several sports organizations requesting screenings. Derek, who helped coordinate the film's martial arts sequences, has been invited to speak at conferences about ethical coaching and athlete mental health. After the screening, Sarah finds her grandfather in his usual spot, the dojo where everything began. But now, the old building buzzes with new energy. Classes are full, not just with students learning to fight, but with young people learning to stand up for what's right. Your mother's case is officially closed, he tells her as they prepare for the evening class. The investigation had finally concluded, bringing justice not just for Catherine Mitchell but for several other athletes who'd been silenced over the years. She would be proud, you know, not just of you, but of how you've helped others find their way. Sarah watches as her students file in, a mix of faces that would have seemed impossible months ago. Former bullies train alongside former victims. The popular kids work with the outcasts. Even some of the girls from Riverside Prep, her old tormentors, have joined the program. Lily, taking a break from her newfound filmmaking career, helps demonstrate a particularly tricky move. Her camera sits idle for once, but its impact continues. The documentary has sparked important conversations about power, responsibility, and the true meaning of strength. Remember, Sarah tells her class, martial arts isn't about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself. Every time you choose not to abuse your power, you get stronger. The students practice in pairs, and Sarah notices something remarkable. When someone struggles, others stop to help. When someone falls, multiple hands reach out to lift them up. The competitive spirit hasn't disappeared, but it's been transformed into something constructive rather than destructive. After class, the core group gathers for their weekly meeting. The Catherine Mitchell Youth Development Program has expanded to 3 more schools, with plans for further growth. Jake shares updates about the new peer counseling initiative, while Madison discusses upcoming community outreach events. We're making a difference, Derek observes, reviewing the program's impact statistics. Reported bullying incidents are down 60%. Athletic participation is up, especially among girls and previously marginalized students. Sarah fingers her mother's belt, now framed on the dojo wall alongside a photo of Catherine Mitchell teaching her own class of students. The belt serves as a reminder not of past victories, but of ongoing responsibility. My mom used to say that true strength ripples outward, Sarah tells her friends, that when one person stands up, they make it easier for others to do the same. As if to prove her point, a new student enters the dojo, one of Jake's former wrestling teammates, looking nervous but determined. "I heard this is where people come to learn how to be strong," he says hesitantly. "The right way." Sarah exchanges glances with her friends, seeing in their eyes the same understanding that's been growing in her heart. Their story isn't just about overcoming bullies or exposing corruption. It's about breaking cycles, healing wounds, and building something better than what came before. "Welcome," she says, gesturing him inside. "You're in the right place." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.